Welcome to Mommy's Love Podcast, where we talk about the topics and issues that modern breastfeeding moms face. And we help bring simple solutions to help overcome these with the aid of specialists and, best of all, real-life experienced MONs. We believe that breastfeeding should not be done alone, and we welcome moms from all walks of life. Whether it's your first time, you're a full-time breastfeeding mom, or you're just not sure if breastfeeding is right for you. We care that you feel supported and that what's important to you is put to ease. With a little bit of mommy's love, everything else can be learned. And now, this is your host, Stephanie Murillo, passionate breastfeeding advocate that did not get here by chance, but by her own breastfeeding journey that inspired her to promote breastfeeding as a community.
Hey mamas, welcome to the Breastfeeding Secrets Podcast. We're here to celebrate the incredible journey of motherhood. I'm your host, Stephanie Murillo, and today we're going to dive into a topic that probably a lot of you, if you have breastfed before, you're very familiar, and if you haven't, you have maybe likely kind of had some anxiety or some thoughts about this, and it's basically related to the challenges and solutions for breastfeeding pain, okay? So let's dive into it so that you can become a bit more familiar with this topic. Breastfeeding is a beautiful thing and it's a beautiful journey, but let's be honest, sometimes it can be really, really painful, and that pain can be related to a lot of different things. So that's kind of the topic that I want to kind of delve into a little bit. And you might be asking yourself, why? Why does it hurt? Why the pain? It's such a natural thing. You see a dog kind of laying on their side, feeding all their puppies, and they seem to have the hang of it. So why is it painful for me? Well, let's explore some of the reasons, which are actually something that is very common, and ways to overcome it as well. So the number one reason for pain in regard to breastfeeding is caused because of an incorrect latch, or what we call a shallow latch, which basically means kind of like with your nipple, basically. So your milk ducts are all concentrated in the part that kind of sticks out, so you can kind of visualize it, right? So that's called your nipple. You will see all of your milk ducts there. If your baby is just kind of biting down on there and not actually opening up his mouth, kind of like a flanging out the lips and basically having a full latch around the areola, kind of like a fish, then basically they're not latching on correctly, and that's what we call a shallow latch. And what happens there is that there's going to be damage caused to the nipple, because essentially the baby is just biting down on the nipple. And that's one of the number one things that causes pain, because like I said, your nipple will basically be kind of start to get cracked and chapped and sore as well, because essentially it's your baby is biting down on it, okay? Rather than suctioning on it, they're biting down on it. So that's one of the number one reasons. And it can actually be really easily corrected by just making sure that you have a lactation consultant, the support of a lactation consultant, to help you and help guide the baby towards the latch. Remember that breastfeeding, even though it's a natural thing, you kind of have to learn it. Both you and your baby have to kind of work on adjusting that latch and kind of work together in order to get that latch right. So that's why it's so important to be able to have a lactation consultant with you, so that she's guiding you and kind of showing you the proper technique, and so that you can get used to the sensation of it as well. Because although breastfeeding is not supposed to be painful, it can be a little bit uncomfortable at first while you get the hang of it. So they'll kind of set some boundaries in regards to you becoming familiar with what that feels like as well. Engorgement is another culprit for breastfeeding pain, and that's basically when your breasts become very, very full with milk, and then they become very kind of tender. And what happens there is that your milk ducts basically are like an overcharge making milk. So it's causing basically some of your milk ducts to become clogged. And then the thing with that is that can actually lead to mastitis, which is an actual infection. And that can actually be a little bit dangerous, because you will develop a fever. You most likely will have to be on antibiotics and things like that. So it's really, really important that you do become familiarized with when you have that sensation of engorgement, and that you are taking proper breaks in between feedings, not letting your breast get too full. And when they do become too full, make sure that you massage, that you release some of that pressure so that it doesn't become mastitis. The other thing too is cracked or damaged nipples. And we talked about the reason at the beginning, which is mostly due to a shallow latch, but it can also happen because maybe you're positioning the position that you have your baby on, so your baby is pulling too much on your nipple, Also, if you're using breast pumps, not using the right flanges, or maybe using very rough settings, can also cause nipple damage. So it's really, really crucial that in order to avoid that damage to your nipple, that you are using something soothing and lubricating when you are pumping. So you can use like a nipple balm or some coconut oil, something like that, to be able to create lubrication so that flange is not causing like roughness when it's suctioning on your nipple. And then what I mentioned before, make sure that your latch is like a nice deep latch before you latch on your baby. I also wanted to let you know that our podcast, Breastfeeding Secrets, is sponsored by Mummy's Love. I am actually the founder of Mummy's Love, Stephanie Murillo. And I want to encourage you to check out our website. It's full of lots of breastfeeding support products that go beyond just products. We have t-shirts and stickers and mugs and things like that to help support you and encourage you and motivate you along your breastfeeding journey so that it's that much more practical, easygoing, and enjoyable for you. And speaking about Mummy's Love, we have a really cool offer for you that is really related to this topic. We have our USDA organic nipple balm that is formulated with lots of love. It's seriously a labor of love for me because I struggled so much with sore nipples at the beginning of my breastfeeding journey. And trust me, it will provide that care and soothness and relief that you need for very sensitive nipples. And the best part is that, like I mentioned, it's USDA organic. And we also went the extra step to make it pediatrician tested so you can trust its quality 100%. The other great thing is that it's scent-free, taste-free, and color-free. So you don't need to wipe it off before wearing it, and your baby will not even know that it's there. So it's not going to put them off or bother them at all. As of today, we have an amazing deal, 20% off. As of today, the time of this podcast, that you can check out on the footnotes of this podcast. There's going to be a link there, which will take you directly to our website with that deal already applied there. Now, let's talk about the importance of self-care, okay? Taking care of yourself as well, physically, emotional, plays a significant role in your overall breastfeeding experience. So making sure that you're staying hydrated, that you're eating well, that you're getting enough rest, will contribute to your overall experience of breastfeeding and comfort also as well. I also want to encourage you to remember that breastfeeding is a journey that requires patience and support, okay? We have to do this as a tribe. It's not a one woman job and that's it. Even though you're the one that is essentially breastfeeding your baby and your baby depends on you 100% for that breast milk, you need to have a backup system and you need to have a support network that you can surround yourself with that can give you guidance and advice and lots of encouragement, because it's really difficult when you do this alone. But when you do it surrounded by a good support network, it makes a huge, huge difference. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to keep kind of that positive vibe going and acknowledge, be real with you. The rawness and the truthness is that breastfeeding is really challenging. I'll kind of share my own story when I first started to breastfeed and those first few days where I was really trying to get a hold of kind of like cracking down on that latch. It was so difficult for me. And I was so persistent that I didn't give myself enough breaks. And I ended up causing a lot of damage to my nipples to the point where I couldn't breastfeed for a few days. I had to be like exclusively pumping, and the milk that I was pumping would come out pink because of the blood on my nipples. And that was again because I wasn't giving myself the opportunity to work on that latch correctly, and I was forcing it too much, and neither baby or myself were having the opportunity to kind of take breaks in between to kind of put ourselves together again. So I definitely recommend just having a lot of patience, have some grace on yourself, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Look for alternatives, see what works best for you during that time so that your nipples can recover. And like I mentioned before, having a nipple balm is a godsend. It makes a huge difference into how your nipples are able to heal faster so you can get back on track with breastfeeding. So thank you again for tuning into our Mummy's Love, a sponsored podcast, Breastfeeding Secrets. We hope that you found this really, really helpful to give you kind of a little bit more knowledge into why breastfeeding is perceived as painful, what causes that pain, and some of the remedies and tips that you can do to overcome the painfulness that sometimes is related to breastfeeding. Don't forget to visit our website, mummyslove.com or imakemilk.com, and be sure to check out the footnotes of the podcast. All the notes are there in regards to what we've talked about, including links and discounts and things like that. And let's encourage each other, mamas. Let's support each other. And whenever you can, please make sure that you talk about the positive parts of breastfeeding and not so much about that painful part, because sometimes it causes a lot of anxiety in moms, and we don't want to kind of beat them down before they've even begun their breastfeeding journey, because we do get over that part, that initial part when a lot of pain is experienced, and especially when we have a good support network and we're working with IBCLCs that can help us and can guide us. It's definitely something that we can navigate through and overcome so we can get back on track.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this podcast, we would love for you to be part of our Facebook group at Mommy's Love Facebook link, and our VIP club, where you can subscribe for free coupons, discounts, and offers of breastfeeding and baby products. We look forward to being part of what we believe will be the most rewarding and amazing journey of your life. Mommy's Love was created to provide information about breastfeeding options and alternatives for people everywhere. We do our best to bring the most up-to-date and accurate information. However, it should not be used to diagnose, treat, or prevent issues you may experience. The opinions and information stated in this podcast were not intended for you to replace recommendations by your healthcare provider, and we always advise you to consult with your doctor before making any changes to your health routine, especially when it involves the care of yourself and your babies.